Hi everybody, so this is the Marigold Tarot, which I received about a week or so ago. It's in this lovely glossy box, black box, which plays really well with the very reflective gold here. I don't usually like too glossy, too bling, but these two work really well together, and it's really simple. It has the dagger, the marigold, the skull, and the hand, symbolizing the suits, I suppose. And then in the back, it's just simple. It says a 28 card tarot deck rooted in life, death, and gold, illustrated by Amrit Brar. And so at the bottom of the box is flush with the edges of the lid, so it makes it a bit hard to open when it's empty. But when it's not empty, you can simply let the bottom drop a little bit. The inside is plain blue. For whatever reason, I probably would have preferred this to be something else, but it just feels almost raw, almost unfinished. But I do understand, as an independent publisher, cost is of the essence. And then we have here the box seemingly a little bit padded. I don't think it's loose, but this is the second instance that I come across padded box. So in one instance in particular, I came across a box that is too small and too thin, not too small but too thin for the deck, so it kind of ended up bursting on the seams, literally. And so this is, I think there is like a padding around here, so potentially this deck might be a bit too deep, or perhaps was created to incorporate a book, a little bit like the Petra K Tarot, but this padding is a little bit more permanent, or a little bit more, you see what I mean there? So I'm not going to try to remove that, but you can tell there's this hollowness here, that this surface is a little bit raised compared to the bottom of the actual box. So I'll put that aside for now. And I do apologize for the background noises. It's very, very unpleasant, but there's nothing I can do about that. So either I make this video now, or I never make it. So let's take a look at the where is it here? Right, the majors first. So this is the back like so. I first came across this on Kickstarter, and when it was initially conceived, if I understand this correctly, what you see here as rusty gold brass here was originally designed in yellow, the marigold yellow. I remember thinking marigold and the yellow gold, or the gold on the tarot against the black. And this idea of the marigold flowers really play in my own mind quite beautifully. And I remember a movie that I watched, I think it was in the 90s, called The Monsoon Wedding, I believe. There's this character that stood in my mind where he just kept eating marigold flowers. If any of you remember that scene, please do correct me, feel free to correct me if that's not actually the Monsoon Wedding I'm thinking about. But it fascinated me, and after that I worked for a multinational corporation where I had to go to India for work, and because we weren't sure about how women should be dressed to remain respectful to our host in India, we were so inexperienced, and the men can simply wear ties and suit, and as a female business travelers, we were in a rather interesting position in a variety of ways, which I will talk about some other time, but one of which was we weren't sure whether we should come in, I don't know, we should come in, wearing a female version of a suit, or whether we should wear a traditional Indian. And when I say traditional Indian, it's a bit like saying traditional Indonesian. There's just so many ethnic groups, so many cultures and religions and customs, and so many traditional clothing to choose from, because India is not monocultural as Indonesia isn't. And so we, out of practical reason, this is the magician, So for practical reason, we ended up with a shalwar kameez, which is this one here. Because with a shalwar kameez like this, I can just wear the pants, the top, and all this come in a set. And so we went to Little India in Singapore and purchased a couple of sets for ourselves, and they all come all together. I think, no, I've gifted it away. I gifted it away to yeah, because you know, you can accumulate so much belonging, and whenever you move country, you are forced to shed some material possessions, which is always a good thing. And so this reminds me very much of that. And also, I used to be married to a Southeast Asian husband whose heritage lies in South Asia, and we have two weddings. One is a very Catholic, very Western wedding because my family is pretty casual about tradition, and the other one is a South Asian tradition. And this color scheme remind me very much of his ancestral traditional clothing, especially for the women, consist of cream and gold, and they are beautiful. They're so beautiful. So this multicoloredness reminds me so much of the color of the traditional clothing of his people, or the people of his ancestors. I adore this. This is so beautiful. This is probably the most beautiful card in the deck, or my favorite anyway. And there's this thing about Marigold that I found quite interesting, because they're quite prominent in South Asian rituals and traditions and ceremonies. And with that scene with the man eating marigold constantly in that movie that I think is Monsoon Wedding, I begin to wonder if marigold has a special meaning, but I never really did research that further. I also come to know a lot of Punjabi friends and went to their weddings, and from those ceremonies I realized that the majority of people who identify themselves as Punjabi are Sikh and not Hindu. And I know it sounds quite ignorant of me, and I was quite ignorant, because I asked a Punjabi friend of what was going on with a Hindu wedding ceremony and Indian ceremony, because Indian is so multicultural. From the north, you have very different customs to the south, say. And so I turned to a Punjabi friend and I asked, what's going on here? And then she said, I don't know, I'm not Hindu, I am Sikh. And I thought, oh, of course. So there's interesting is it's like the fingers off here. Oh, is that a ring? I don't know. It looks like the finger is broken there. Maybe that's supposed to be a ring, I'm not sure. So that's justice. So I quite like that it doesn't adopt the Western iconography of the scale and of the sword. So I'm not quite sure if I already mentioned it in this video, because I had to try several times due to lighting and the noises next door. But Towards Diversity in Tarot is a series that I have, which I could occasionally post on, but I feel that when I saw this on Kickstarter that I have to back it, because I need to put, you know, money where my mouth is in terms of supporting, in terms of contributing towards the diversity of tarot by contributing to diverse creators of tarot, so that we have more diversity between tarot decks, because I don't think expecting all tarot decks, each tarot deck, to be diverse within each deck, I think it's a little problematic. But as I probably already mentioned, I owe a couple of you a conversation around that, and I will do that soon, as soon as I can. So I'm really quite pleased when she changed the gold, or the yellow marigold, I don't know why I want to say marigold yellow to this yellow here, and I really quite like this muted yellow. I really do. This is Judgment. I'm a little puzzled about this Judgment. It's like someone is holding somebody down almost, so I'm not quite sure. I wish there was a book with it. I do wonder if this dagger here is, I know that it's probably not. I know that people who follow the Sikh religion has a sacred dagger as part of their practice. So now we have the court cards. So I have not been able to find a pattern in the court cards, in the face cards, and so I find that a little bit when I can't find patterns in the court cards, because I don't see them as humans, I don't see them as people, I see them as a stage, like the next cycle after the minors and before the majors. They are their own cycle, and without a pattern I can't figure out what the cycle is. And so this is the Courts of Rings, which is equivalent to coins, I believe. So that would be Earth, that would be the world of realization, manifestation, actualization. And then this is the Courts of Cups, or water. So again, I can't seem to see a pattern, not yet anyway. And then this is the courts. These are the Courts of Swords, or air, the realm of the mind. So far I've been playing around with the majors and I really like it. I have yet to find my footing with the courts, and so these are the minors. And with the minors, because of the way how I have my own way of seeing the minors, and I haven't quite yet decide how I'm going to tackle this, because it's quite pippish, and with pip minors I see them like a construction, like so even number broken by the odd numbers breaking even number, if you know what I mean. And so in this case, these are the aces, the 10 of wands, 9 of wands. So sometimes you can see 8 of wands, the fruit is, it's bearing fruit. 9 of wands, there is this heavy burden at that light at the end of the tunnel. 10 of wands is all this burden, but this flower here, this garland almost, you can imagine the smell and the sight of such garlands. So it is a beautiful burden. That's what came to my mind. So I'm still forming an idea around them. 7 of wands, 6 of wands, like a crown of triumph. I see that. So it's quite intuitive, but it just takes a bit of getting used to. 5 of wands there. So you can see breaking the pattern of the even numbers, so that's fine. 4 of wands, 3 of wands, again breaking the pattern of the even numbers, so that's cool. I don't actually even need to know what the plants are, because to me it's inconsequential. The geometric composition for me is more important. So 10 of rings. So the background music is a little loud because there's just a lot of noise outside. So this is 9 of rings, self-sufficiency for me. 8 of rings. I quite like the hands because it reminds me of Indonesian culture, or Javanese culture is highly influenced in ancient times with South Asian, the Sanskrit, even ancient Javanese script is actually Sanskrit, and a lot of our mythology and folklores came from India. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata with Buddhism came after Hinduism, came Buddhism. After Buddhism came Islam, which is the majority of the current dominant religion in Indonesia. But before Indonesia was Indonesia, when it was still the part of a huge empire called Sriwijaya and Majapahit, there were Hindu and Buddhist people around the region of Buddhist and Hindu, and these hands remind me of this sort of the Indonesian movement of dancing. There's a lot of like the Bharatanatyam or the Indian dance, is a lot of, the Thai has a lot of this kind of movement, and the Bharatanatyam has a lot of that, and the Indonesian has a lot of the flicking of the finger, you know, this sort of the twirling of it, like so. I can't quite, there's not enough room here for me to, but I like that. I like that there's sense of home. There glimpses, there glimmers of a sense of home. And when I say home, I don't mean New Zealand isn't home, but there's a sense of the home of the roots, of the ancestral, of where you come from. So especially this hand like that, it reminds me so much of, you know, of my roots. And part of a sense of home is not only a gathering of people, like-minded people, or a place where you feel you can belong in terms of your values, in terms of your belief system, socially, politically, but also in terms of roots. And in terms of roots, of course, it can't be New Zealand because my root is elsewhere. And I really like that I can look at cards and I can sense my roots, and I miss that. Sensing my roots is part of identity, is part of feeling home. It isn't the only thing. I would never give up being a New Zealander, because I've become a New Zealander, and I can't just erase that and pretend I am just Indonesian or just Javanese or just Chinese. And so these patterns are quite pippish, and I'm still making up my mind about them, to be honest. I really can't say anything other than I have mixed feelings about them so far, although I really like them aesthetically, and I really quite like that. And so nothing comes to my mind immediately, unlike the Sasurai Bito and some of these other ones, you know, they intuitive hit immediately come to mind. It's not the case here. I feel like I need to think about it a bit more. And so I played around with this a little bit, but I think I may put this aside for now and come back to it some other time. But the majors, definitely, I quite like the majors, especially how unusual or un-Western they are. Like this death is quite, somebody is cutting someone's mouth almost, and I feel like I'm missing a story here, and I wish Amrit Brar is going to, I might try and email her and see if there might be a book coming, because it might be helpful, it might not, I don't know. That looks like the lion. We don't know what this is. Maybe it's a wolf, maybe. I'm thinking, you know, sun, moon. And then the star is like some kind of a bird. So maybe that's a wolf. Or looking at the, yeah, maybe it's a dog. So that's kind of a lion. So this judgment I'm a little puzzled about. I'm not quite sure. Yeah. So the cardstock is quite nice to shuffle. Both overhand shuffle and peripheral shuffle, but the edges are a little bit sharp, but not as sharp as some others that actually slice the surface of your skin. This isn't like that. And I think the edges, because of that, I suspect the edges might become quite fragile quite soon, but I'm not quite there yet. You can see one or two of the cards arrived chipped, and I really haven't asked her for replacement, because I know for me Kickstarter is not purchasing a deck, it's backing an artist to kickstart their project, to kickstart their shop and their product. And so it's like it really, for me, Kickstarter is like donating to backing a project, donating, supporting an artist, and as a courtesy they send us the deck. And so I felt uneasy about demanding replacement cards, although I'm sure if I do ask, she wouldn't mind. But there is one card that's arrived already chipped, and I can see that this probably might be one of those that will chip. So if I am thinking of edging it just to prevent it from chipping further. As you can see, those white edges there, there, and I might actually edge this black instead of gold. I thought about gold, but I want the gold to stand out prominently, and if I edge this gold, it might have to fight for attention. The gold might, I'm going to end up having gold here and gold here, and I prefer the gold to be just on the drawing, so I'm thinking maybe I'll edge this black. So that's the Marigold Tarot. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.